Good evening, my little creatures of the night. Mr. Wendigo back again with your late night creature feature. Before we begin, I'm curious. Where are you listening from tonight? Alone in your room? Driving through empty roads? Drop a comment and let me know. I like knowing who's out there in the dark with me. Now then, let's see what tonight's tale brings us. The Hog Thing. Chapter 1. Blood on the Porch. The Harris place sat 30 minutes outside Gilmer, where the asphalt bled into dirt and pine needles swallowed sound. 125 acres of East Texas woods, bought 3 years back for $200,000 and change. Elizabeth had found the listing on a Tuesday. Frank closed on it by Friday. They drove out from Dallas once a month. No service, no neighbors close enough to hear. Just the land and the silence and the kind of peace you can't buy in the city. Elizabeth worked contracts for a design firm, downtown corporate branding, website redesigns, the kind of work that paid well but hollowed you out if you let it, 60-hour weeks. Clients who changed their minds every Thursday. She'd been doing it for 12 years and the burnout was starting to show in the way she snapped at Frank over nothing, the way coffee stopped working after the third cup. Frank ran commercial HVAC across the Metroplex, 20 years climbing into attics in August, fixing units on flat roofs where the tar bubbled under your boots. His knees cracked when he stood. His back went out twice a year. He was 46 and felt 60. The ranch was supposed to fix that, give them something to look forward to. Somewhere that didn't smell like exhaust and didn't sound like sirens and didn't feel like the walls were closing in. They looked at properties for 8 months before they found this one. The realtor said it was a steal. Previous owner died. Family wanted it gone fast. Elizabeth didn't ask questions. Frank checked the foundation, the roof, the well. Everything worked. They signed. The cabin sat at the end of a long gravel drive, log frame with a wraparound porch and windows big enough to see the whole clearing. Elizabeth had picked the windows. Floor-to-ceiling glass on the south side, facing the woods. "Let the light in," she'd said. "Let the trees feel close." Frank had installed motion lights, a generator, and a security system that didn't do shit without cell service, but it made him feel better. She cut the engine on the side-by-side and listened to the wood settle. The pines were tall here, old growth, dense enough to turn noon into dusk. Frank climbed out, stretched, popped his back. The sound echoed across the clearing. "Smells like rain," he said. "Always smells like rain out here." "Nah, this one's close." He was right. The air had that heavy feeling, pressure building in your sinuses, storm coming, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. Out here it was hard to tell. Cowboy was waiting at the gate, 65, maybe 70, white beard down past his collar, Carhartt jacket so old the elbows had gone smooth. Real name was Jim or John or something nobody remembered anymore. He'd been cowboy since the 70s and liked it that way. Drove a beat-to-shit Ford pickup, drank Lone Star, and knew every inch of these woods. They paid him $100 a month cash to keep an eye on the place when they were gone. He'd never missed a weekend. "Y'all picked a hell of a time," he said, spitting tobacco into the dirt. "Moon's full tonight." Frank grinned. "Good. We'll spot some hogs." Cowboy looked at him for a long second, the kind of look that said, "You're not listening. You don't want to hunt what's been killing these hogs." Elizabeth frowned. "Coyotes?" "Coyotes don't leave trophies." They hauled the cooler up to the porch together, Cowboy talking the whole way. Cattle prices were shit this year. Storm was going to be a bad one. His cousin Darrell saw something 2 weeks back out near the old Hightower place that made him quit night fishing for good. "Big," Cowboy said. "Real big. Walked on 2 legs but weren't no man." Frank cracked a Lone Star and handed one over. "Bigfoot?" "Worse." "What's worse than Bigfoot?" Cowboy took a long pull from the bottle, eyes on the trees. "Something that remembers." The sun dropped fast after that. They sat on the porch drinking and watching the sky turn orange behind the pines. Cowboy's dog, some kind of hound mix, gray around the muzzle, lay at his feet, ears flat. The dog hadn't moved since they got here, just lay there staring at the woods like it was waiting for something. Elizabeth asked about the hogs. Cowboy said they'd been finding them for 2 weeks, gutted, throats crushed, eyes gone. "Gone how?" Frank asked. "Clean, like someone scooped them out with a spoon." "Jesus." "Nah, Jesus don't do work like that." Frank laughed, but it came out wrong. Elizabeth didn't laugh at all. She was looking at the trees, at the way the shadows pooled between the trunks. The wind had stopped. The forest felt like it was holding its breath. Cowboy leaned forward, elbows on his knees. His voice dropped. "Y'all know what Red Hollow is?" They shook their heads. "Old Choctaw ground. Runs under most of this county. Goes back before Texas was Texas, before white folks carved it up and named it. The Choctaw. They got stories about it. About something that lives in it." He paused, took another drink. The beer was getting warm in his hand. Something that got real hungry a long time ago and never stopped. "What kind of something?" Elizabeth asked. Cowboy's jaw worked like he was chewing on the words before he let them out. "The kind that don't die easy. The kind that learns, watches, waits. The kind that remembers every person who ever spilled blood on its ground." He looked at Frank. "The Choctaw got rules about Red Hollow. Don't hunt there after dark. Don't camp there. Don't spill blood on the ground unless you're ready to feed what's underneath. Blood calls to blood. Hunger calls to hunger." "And you think that's what's killing the hogs?" Frank said. "I think something woke up that shouldn't have, and I think it's been getting closer." Cowboy stood, stretched, whistled for the dog. The hound didn't move at first, just kept staring at the trees. Cowboy whistled again, sharper. The dog got up, slow, reluctant. "I'll check the cameras on my way out. Y'all lock up tight tonight. Don't open the door for nothing, not even if it sounds like me." Elizabeth wrapped her arms around herself. "You think it'll come back?" Cowboy's face was stone. "It already has." He climbed into his truck, the engine coughing to life. Taillights disappeared down the drive, swallowed by the pines. The woods pressed in close. The silence felt heavy, like water in your ears. Frank finished his beer and crushed the can. "Old man's full of shit." "Maybe." "Choctaw curse? Come on, it's 2024. Elizabeth didn't answer. She was still looking at the trees, the way they leaned in, the way the dark pooled between them like something liquid. They went inside, unpacked the cooler. Frank fired up the camp stove, heated beans and sausage in a skillet. They ate on the porch, watching the light die. Neither of them talked much. The silence out here was different than Dallas silence. In the city, there was always something: traffic, neighbors, the hum of 1,000 machines. Out here, the silence had weight. It pressed against your eardrums. The smell hit them just before dark. Sweet, metallic, wrong. Frank stood up fast, hand going to his nose. "What the hell is that?" They found it at the bottom of the steps. A wild hog, maybe 300 pounds, sprawled across the gravel. Its throat was caved in like something had grabbed it and squeezed until the bones gave. The ribs were spread open, organs missing. The cavity was clean, too clean, and the eyes were gone, not clawed out, removed. The sockets were smooth as glass, like someone had taken a melon baller to them. Blood had pooled under the carcass and soaked into the dirt, turning it black. Flies were already working the edges. The smell was thick enough to choke on. Elizabeth covered her mouth, turned away. "Oh my God." Frank walked down slow, boots crunching gravel. He crouched next to it, looked close. The cuts were precise, surgical. Whatever did this knew anatomy, knew exactly where to open the body to make it bleed out fast. "Who the hell would do this?" Elizabeth whispered. Frank stood, wiped his hands on his jeans even though he hadn't touched anything. Not who, what. They dragged the carcass with a rope, Frank pulling, Elizabeth pushing with a shovel. It took 20 minutes to haul it to the fence line, their hands slipping on the nylon, the weight of the thing obscene. Buzzards were already circling overhead, black shapes against the dying light. By the time they got back to the cabin, the sky had gone full dark and the stars were out, bright and cold. Inside, Elizabeth scrubbed her hands raw in the sink. The water ran pink, then clear. Frank tried to joke about it, something about coyotes with a grudge, but his voice kept cracking mid-sentence. The cabin felt smaller now. The windows felt too big. All that glass, all that darkness pressing against it. Elizabeth looked out at the clearing. Why would it leave that here? Marking territory, maybe. Animals do that. That wasn't an animal, Frank. He didn't argue. At 10:47, something heavy landed on the roof. They both froze. Elizabeth looked up at the ceiling. Frank reached for the .45 on the counter, the one he kept loaded with hollow points. Another thud. Slow, deliberate, like something pacing. "Raccoons," Frank whispered. "Raccoons don't weigh 200 pounds. The sound moved across the roof, heel to toe, measured, patient. It stopped above the living room. Silence. Then it started again, slower this time, testing, learning the structure. Frank grabbed the flashlight and stepped onto the porch. The beam cut through the dark, catching dust and moths and nothing else. The motion lights didn't trigger. The woods looked solid black trunks stretching into forever. No movement. Then snap. A branch broke 40 yards out, heavy, upright. Not a deer, not a hog, something bigger. Frank aimed the light toward the sound. The beam swept across the pines, catching bark and needles and shadow. Then there, 2 dull amber glows hovering chest-high among the trees, unblinking. Staring back, the flashlight flickered once. The beam dimmed, then died. Frank smacked it against his palm. Nothing. Dead battery. He changed it yesterday. From the woods came the sound of breathing. Wet, ragged. The air around it shimmered like heat off asphalt, but the temperature had dropped 20 degrees. Elizabeth's voice came from behind him, barely a whisper. "Frank, come inside." He backed toward the door, eyes on the trees. The amber glow didn't move. It just watched. Frank's hand found the door frame. He stepped inside. Elizabeth slammed the door, threw the deadbolt, pulled the curtain shut. Frank checked the windows, the back door, the gun. 15 rounds. He wished he'd brought the rifle. The .30-06 was still at home in Dallas, locked in the safe. Stupid. Out here you brought the rifle. The roof creaked again, slower now, like it was listening to them move. They didn't sleep that night. They sat on the couch with the lights off, watching the windows, listening to the silence press in. Around 3 in the morning, the generator kicked off. The hum died. The fridge went quiet. The cabin went dark. And from somewhere outside came the sound of claws dragging across metal, slow, rhythmic, like it was carving something into the tin. Elizabeth grabbed Frank's arm. "It's on the roof again." "I know. What's it doing?" "I don't know." The scraping continued. 5 minutes, 10, then it stopped. Silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Frank stood, moved to the window, looked out through a gap in the curtains. The clearing was empty. The moon was up now, full and bright like Cowboy said. Everything looked silver and black, shadows knife-sharp. Then he saw it. The hog thing stood at the edge of the clearing, half in the trees, half in the moonlight, 9 feet tall, maybe more, shoulders wide as a doorway, covered in matted fur, dark and slick. Its legs bent wrong, knees backward like a dog's. The arms were too long, ending in clawed hands that hung past its knees. But the head was the worst part. Elongated snout, tusks curling up from the jaw, yellow and cracked, eyes dull amber, glowing in the moonlight, and the way it stood upright, balanced, patient, not like an animal, like something that had learned to stand that way, learned to wait. It tilted its head, slow, curious. Then it turned and walked back into the trees. No hurry, just gone. Frank let the curtain fall. His hands were shaking. "What did you see?" Elizabeth asked. "Nothing," he lied. But she knew. She'd seen his face. They sat there in the dark until the sun came up. Chapter 2, The Cameras. Morning came gray and wet. The storm had rolled in overnight, turning the clearing into a bowl of fog. Elizabeth stood at the window, coffee mug shaking in her hands. Instant Folgers, boiled on the camp stove. It tasted like dirt, but it was hot. Frank was outside, walking the perimeter with the gun. She watched him through the glass, big, solid, reliable Frank who fixed air conditioners and never complained. He looked small out there. The woods made everything look small. Cowboy's truck was gone. She hadn't heard it leave. His cooler still sat on the porch, 1 beer left inside, condensation beating the glass. Next to it was a hoof print, pressed into the wood deep as a fist, clawed, wrong. The toes were too long. The shape was wrong. Frank came back inside, face pale. Water dripped from his jacket. Gates open. Fences torn. Torn? Not cut. Torn. Posts. Bent. Wire ripped out of the ground. Elizabeth set the coffee down. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "We need to leave." "Truck won't start." "Battery's dead." "What?" "I checked. Cables are cut. Clean through. Somebody crawled under there and cut them." She stared at him. "When?" "Sometime last night." They stood there in the silence, the weight of it settling over them like water. No phone, no truck, no way out except on foot, and the nearest house was 6 miles through the woods, through Red Hollow, through whatever was out there. Elizabeth thought about Cowboy, about the way his dog had been whining, about the look on his face when he said it already has. "We checked the cameras," she said. Frank nodded. The trail cams were motion activated, scattered across the property. Elizabeth had insisted on them after the first year, wanted to see what kind of wildlife they had. Deer, mostly, the occasional bobcat. Once they caught a black bear on the back fence, 400 pounds, gone before morning. 1 camera near the feeder, 1 by the barn, 1 at the back fence, 1 facing the clearing. Elizabeth pulled the SD cards and plugged them into the iPad while Frank boiled more water for instant coffee that neither of them would drink. The first footage was normal. A raccoon at 2:13 an owl at 3:42. Empty frames. Then the second camera near the barn showed something big moving fast across the lower left corner at 4:06. Too close to focus. Just a blur of fur and shadow and something that might have been a hand. Elizabeth rewound it, played it again, still couldn't make it out, but it was big, and it was moving toward the house. The third camera was aimed at the feeder, except it wasn't anymore. Elizabeth frowned, zoomed in. The angle was wrong. The camera was facing the house now, facing the big glass windows on the south side. She could see the cabin on the screen, could see herself and Frank inside, sitting on the couch. Last night, real time. She could see Frank holding the gun, could see herself with her arms wrapped around her knees. Frank leaned over her shoulder. What the hell? It moved the camera. When? She checked the timestamp, scrolled back through the footage, found the moment. 3 days ago, 2:17 p.m., before they'd even arrived for the weekend. The camera was pointed at the feeder. Normal. Then a shape moved into frame. The Hog Thing. It walked up to the camera, looked at it, reached out with one clawed hand. The image shook. Went black. When it came back, the angle had changed. Now it was pointed at the house. The creature stepped back, looked at its work, then it walked away. Elizabeth's stomach dropped. Frank, it's been watching us. For 3 days? Since before we got here. The footage continued. Hours of the empty cabin, then yesterday their truck pulling up, them unloading, cowboy sitting on the porch, all of it recorded, all of it watched. Frank's hands were on the table, knuckles white. Keep going. She scrolled forward. Evening. The lights in the cabin going on. Them eating dinner on the porch. Cowboy leaving. Darkness. Then movement at the edge of the frame. The Hog Thing walked into view. Slow. Deliberate. It stopped in front of the camera, between the lens and the house. Massive. Shoulders blocking the cabin completely. It stood there. Just stood there. 30 seconds. A minute. Staring at the house. At them inside. Then it turned. Looked directly into the camera lens. And it knelt. Slow. Deliberate. Face filling the screen. The snout was long. Tusks curling from the jaw like boar tusks but thicker. Yellowed. The eyes were amber, reflecting the infrared like coins. The mouth opened slightly, lips pulling back, teeth. Rows of them, and something that might have been a smile. It held the position, 10 seconds, 20, 30, just smiling at the camera, at them, knowing they would see this. Then slowly it backed away, out of frame, gone. Now the cabin was visible again. Them inside. Still sitting there. Still alive. Still unaware. Elizabeth's hands were shaking so hard she almost dropped the iPad. Frank grabbed it, rewound the footage, watched it again. His face had gone gray. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the clearing. The fog was thick. She couldn't see past 20 feet, couldn't see the tree line, couldn't see anything. "Where's Cowboy?" she said quietly. Frank didn't answer. He was staring at the iPad. "There's more." She came back to the table. He'd scrolled forward to 5:37 a.m. The camera, the one pointed at the house, showed the Hog Thing standing in the clearing again. Just standing. Watching the cabin. Then it turned and walked toward the gate, toward where Cowboy would have parked his truck. The timestamp jumped. 6:15. The camera angle shook, went dark, came back. Now it was pointed at the gate. At Cowboy's truck. At Cowboy. The old man was getting into the truck, keys in hand. He looked tired, ready to go home. The Hog Thing stood behind him, 10 feet back. Perfectly still. Cowboy didn't see it. Didn't hear it. He opened the door, started to climb in. The creature moved. Fast. So fucking fast. It crossed the distance in 2 steps, grabbed Cowboy by the back of the neck, lifted him off the ground. The old man's legs kicked, his hands clawed at the air. The Hog Thing's other hand wrapped around his chest and squeezed. The sound must have been awful, bones breaking, ribs collapsing. But the camera had no audio, just silent footage of Cowboy thrashing, then going still. The creature held him for a moment, then it bit down on his shoulder, tearing through jacket and flesh. Blood sprayed black in the infrared. It fed quickly, efficiently. When it was done, it dropped the body and walked away, back toward the woods. The camera kept recording. Cowboy's body lay there in the dirt, unmoving, the truck door still open, the keys on the ground. The timestamp showed 6:23 a.m. They'd woken up at 7. Elizabeth turned away from the iPad, hand over her mouth. Frank sat there staring at the screen, frozen. "We have to go," she finally said. "Right now, on foot, we run. 6 miles through Red Hollow with that thing out there. We don't have a choice." Frank looked at the window, at the fog, at the woods. "We won't make it. We can't stay here. If we run, it'll hunt us in the open. Out there we've got nothing. No walls, no weapons except this." He held up the .45. 15 rounds. "You think that's enough?" Elizabeth didn't answer. She knew it wasn't. Frank stood, walked to the window, looked out. "We wait. Someone will come looking. Mail carrier, neighbors, someone. Who? Nobody knows we're here. Cowboy's family when he doesn't come home. That could be days, Frank. We don't have days." He turned, looked at her. His face was set. "We fortify. We wait. And if it comes back, we kill it. You saw what it did to Cowboy. Cowboy didn't have a gun. We do." Elizabeth wanted to argue, wanted to scream that they were going to die here, that the thing outside had been watching them for days, learning them, and no amount of bullets would stop it. But Frank's face was stone. He'd made up his mind. She sat down hard on the couch, head in her hands. The iPad on the table chimed. Low battery, 20%. She looked at it, then at Frank. "Check the other cameras," she said. "I need to know where it is." He picked up the iPad, scrolled through the feeds. The barn camera empty. The back fence camera, nothing. The clearing camera. He stopped, went still. "What?" Elizabeth asked. Frank turned the iPad toward her. The Hog Thing was standing in front of the clearing camera, the one they hadn't checked yet, the one that was supposed to be pointed at the trail. It wasn't pointed at the trail anymore. It was pointed at the house, at the front door. And the creature was standing right in front of it, staring into the lens. Not moving, just staring. The timestamp showed 8:43 a.m. Right now. Elizabeth's blood went cold. "It's out there." Frank moved to the window, gun raised, looked out through the curtains. The fog was lifting. The clearing was visible now, empty. "I don't see it." "It was just there, Frank. It was just..." The iPad went black, battery dead. They stared at it, then at each other. "We're blind now," Frank said. From somewhere outside came the sound of wood creaking, slow, rhythmic, like something heavy shifting its weight on the porch. Chapter 3. The Siege. The silence that followed was worse than any sound. Elizabeth and Frank stood frozen in the living room, the dead iPad on the table, the gun in Frank's hand. Outside, nothing moved. The fog had burned off. The clearing was bright and empty. The pines stood like sentries. But they both felt it, the weight of something watching. Frank moved to the front window, looked out at the porch. Nothing. He checked the side window, the back door. All clear, but the feeling didn't go away. Elizabeth's voice was barely a whisper. "Where is it?" "I don't know." They stood there for 5 minutes, 10, listening, waiting. The cabin had never felt so exposed. All that glass, all those windows. Elizabeth thought about her design pitch, let the light in, let the trees feel close. She'd wanted to feel like they were part of the forest. Now the forest felt like it was inside with them. At 11:37, they heard the truck. Distant at first, engine noise filtering through the trees, getting closer, coming up the drive. Elizabeth ran to the window. "Someone's here." "Wait." But she was already moving toward the door, hands on the deadbolt. Frank grabbed her arm. "Wait." "Someone's here, Frank, we can get help. Wait. The truck came into view. Old Chevy, jacked up on mud tires, light bar across the roof, hunter's rig. It rolled into the clearing slow, tires crunching gravel. Stopped 20 feet from the cabin. The driver's door opened. A man climbed out mid-40s, camo jacket, orange vest, rifle slung over his shoulder. He looked at the cabin, then at the woods, then back at the cabin. "Hello?" he called out. "Y'all all right?" Elizabeth tried to move toward the door again. Frank held her back. "Something's wrong." "What are you talking about? He can help us." "Why's he here?" "I don't know. Maybe he heard." "Heard what?" "There's no one to hear. We're 30 minutes from town." The hunter walked closer, boots loud on the gravel. "Heard some shots last night. Wanted to make sure everything's okay." He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, looked up at the windows. "Y'all in there?" Frank kept his hand on Elizabeth's arm, kept the gun pointed at the floor. Something in his gut was screaming wrong, wrong, wrong. The hunter tilted his head, waited, then he smiled. "I can see you in there. It's all right. Just want to make sure you're okay." Elizabeth pulled away from Frank, moved toward the door. "We need help. Our truck won't start and—" "Elizabeth, no." But she had the deadbolt open, had the door cracked. "Please, we need to get out of here. There's something in the woods." The hunter's smile widened. "I know." The words hung in the air. Then the hog thing stepped out from behind the truck. It had been there the whole time, crouched low, hidden, waiting. The hunter didn't run, didn't scream, just stood there as the creature rose to its full height behind him, 9 feet of fur and muscle and wrong. The man turned, looked up at it. His face went white. "Oh, Jesus." The hog thing grabbed him by the head, one hand, lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing. The hunter's rifle clattered to the dirt. His hands clawed at the creature's arm, boots kicking air. The hog thing squeezed. The sound was like a melon breaking, wet, final. The hunter's body went limp, legs swinging. Blood poured from his nose, his ears, his eyes. The creature held him there for a moment, watching the life drain out. Then it opened its mouth and bit down on his throat. The whole thing took 15 seconds. When it was done, the hog thing dropped the body and looked at the cabin, at the door, at Elizabeth standing there frozen in the doorway. It tilted its head, slow, curious. Frank yanked Elizabeth back inside, slammed the door, threw the deadbolt. "Get away from the windows!" They ran. Elizabeth's legs felt like water. Behind them, something heavy slammed into the front door. The whole frame shook. Another impact. The wood cracked but held. Frank pushed her into the bedroom. Bathroom. Now. "Frank, go." Another impact. The sound of wood splintering. Frank looked back at the living room. The door was bowing inward. The deadbolt wouldn't hold much longer. He ran to the bedroom, slammed the door, pushed the dresser in front of it. Elizabeth was in the bathroom, knife in her hands, tears streaming down her face. "It killed him," she whispered. "It just killed him." The front door exploded inward. The sound of it echoed through the cabin, then footsteps. Slow, heavy, dragging. It was inside. Frank sat with his back against the dresser, gun pointed at the bedroom door. Elizabeth crouched in the bathroom doorway. They could hear it moving through the cabin, the sound of furniture being shoved aside. Glass breaking. The creature wasn't searching. It was destroying. The footsteps stopped outside the bedroom door. Silence. Then tap, 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 claws on wood, slow, deliberate. Frank's finger tightened on the trigger. The tapping stopped. More silence. 30 seconds. A minute. Then the footsteps moved away, back through the cabin, out the front door. They waited. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. Frank stood slowly, moved the dresser, cracked the bedroom door open. The living room was destroyed. Couch overturned, table smashed. The front door hung on one hinge. And through the opening, they could see the hunter's body sprawled in the gravel, head twisted at an impossible angle. "It's playing with us," Frank said quietly. Elizabeth came out of the bathroom, face pale. "What do we do?" "We survive till dark. Then we run." "Run where?" "Town. 6 miles. We can make it if we're fast." "Frank, you saw what it did to that man. We don't have a choice. We stay here. We die. We run. Maybe we die. But maybe we don't." She wanted to argue, wanted to say they should fortify, should wait for help. But the look in his eyes stopped her. He knew. They both knew. No one was coming. No one even knew they were here. They spent the next hour gathering supplies, water bottles, energy bars, flashlights. Frank found duct tape, wrapped it around his left arm, elbow to wrist where he'd cut himself on broken glass. Elizabeth put on her hiking boots, the good ones with ankle support. They'd need them if they were running. At 3:15, something slammed into the side of the house. The whole cabin shook. Elizabeth screamed. Frank raised the gun. Another impact, then another. Wham, wham, wham. The sound of meat hitting wood, wet and thick. The smell came next, copper and rot and something worse, something old. Frank ran to the south window, the one with the big glass, and looked out. His face went white. 3 hog carcasses were plastered against the glass, massive, 300 pounds each, gutted, eyes gone, ribs spread open. They'd been thrown with enough force to crack the window, blood sheeting down in thick red curtains, obscuring everything behind them. And through the blood, barely visible, a shape stood in the clearing. The Hog Thing. It wasn't moving, just standing there, head tilted, watching, waiting for them to see, waiting for them to understand. This is what I can do. This is what's coming. Elizabeth backed away from the window, hand over her mouth. Frank kept the gun raised, finger on the trigger. The creature turned and walked back into the trees, slow, deliberate, like it had all the time in the world. The blood kept dripping. The carcasses slid slowly down the glass, leaving streaks. The cabin went quiet. The only sound was their breathing and the wet slide of viscera. Frank lowered the gun. His hands were shaking. "We leave at dusk. We don't wait for full dark. We go the second the sun drops." Elizabeth nodded. She couldn't speak, couldn't think past the image of those bodies hitting the glass, the weight of them, the force. The creature had thrown them like they weighed nothing. They sat on the floor with their backs to the wall, as far from the windows as they could get. Frank checked the gun. 11 rounds left. He'd fired 4 earlier at shadows, wasting ammo on nothing. Elizabeth held the kitchen knife, 10-inch blade. It felt useless, but it was something. At 5:30, the sun started to drop. The clearing went orange, then red, then purple. The shadows stretched. The woods went dark. Frank stood. Time to go. They moved to the back door, the one that faced the woods, away from the clearing. Frank cracked it open, looked out. Nothing, just trees and silence. "Stay close. Stay quiet. We run till we hit the main road. Don't stop for anything." Elizabeth nodded. They stepped outside. The air was cold, colder than it should have been. Their breath fogged. The woods were silent. No birds, no insects, nothing. They moved into the trees, Frank leading, Elizabeth right behind him. The underbrush was thick. Pine needles crunched under their boots. 20 yards in, Elizabeth looked back. The cabin was barely visible through the trunks. "Keep moving. Frank whispered. They did. 50 yards. 100. The trail was narrow, barely visible in the dying light. Frank had his flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. Elizabeth kept the knife out, eyes darting to every shadow. 200 yards. The cabin was gone now, just trees in every direction. Then Frank stopped. Elizabeth almost ran into him. "What?" He held up his hand. Silence. She listened, heard nothing. Then, there, footsteps, heavy, slow, somewhere behind them. The hog thing was following. Frank grabbed her hand. "Run!" They ran. Branches whipped their faces. Roots tried to trip them. The woods closed in, darker with every step. Behind them, the footsteps matched their pace. Not faster, not slower, just following. Keeping distance, patient. 300 yards, 400. Elizabeth's lungs burned. Her legs screamed. Frank was pulling her now, half dragging her when she stumbled. The footsteps stopped. They stopped too, gasping, looking back. Nothing, just darkness and trees. "Where is it?" Elizabeth whispered. "I don't." Something moved in the trees ahead of them, a shadow shifting, too big, too fast. "It got ahead of us," Frank said. They turned, ran back the way they'd come. The footsteps started again, behind them now, pushing them, herding them, back toward the cabin, back toward the clearing. They burst out of the tree line at full speed, stumbled into the clearing. The cabin sat there, front door hanging open, windows dark. Blood still streaked the glass. Frank bent over, hands on his knees, gasping. "It's not letting us leave." "Then what do we do?" He looked at the cabin, at the barn 50 yards away. The barn was older, sturdier, stone foundation, tin roof, better than the cabin for defense. "The barn, we can fortify there, make a stand." "Frank, it's our only shot." They ran for the barn, boots pounding gravel. Behind them, the hog thing stepped out of the trees, slow, in no hurry. It had all night. Chapter 4. Fire and Blood. The barn was dark and cold and smelled like oil and mold and old blood. Frank pulled the door shut behind them, through the locking bar. It wouldn't hold. Nothing would hold. But it was something. Elizabeth looked around, tools on the walls, the chainsaw hanging from a hook, gasoline cans, propane tanks, Frank's riding mower in the corner, covered in dust. "We need weapons," Frank said. He grabbed the chainsaw, checked the fuel. Half a tank. Enough. Elizabeth found a hatchet on the wall, tested the weight, better than the knife. She set the knife down, took the hatchet. Frank pulled down the propane tanks, 2 of them, 20-pounders. "We can rig these. If it comes in here, we blow it. And us with it. Better than what it'll do to us." He was right. She'd seen what it did to the hunter, to Cowboy. She wasn't going to die like that. They spent the next 20 minutes preparing. Frank rigged the propane tanks near the door, ran a line across the floor. Elizabeth found matches, lighter fluid, built a tinder pile near the tanks. One spark and the whole barn would go up. They'd both die, but so would the hog thing. If it could die. Frank loaded the chainsaw with fresh gas from the can, pulled the cord. It sputtered, died. He pulled again. The engine coughed to life, blue smoke curling from the exhaust. He let it idle for a moment, then shut it off. "When it comes, I go high, you go low. We take it apart." Elizabeth nodded. Her hands had stopped shaking. Fear had burned away, leaving something harder. Anger. She was tired of running, tired of being prey. At 8:43, something scraped against the barn door. Slow, rhythmic, claws on metal, The sound echoed through the space, setting their teeth on edge. Frank raised the chainsaw. Elizabeth gripped the hatchet. The scraping stopped. Silence. Then wham! The door buckled inward. The locking bar held. Another impact. The metal shrieked. The bar bent. "Get ready," Frank said. The third impact tore the door off its hinges. It crashed inward, metal screaming, and the hog thing ducked through the opening. It had to duck. That's how big it was. 9 feet of muscle and fur and hunger. Its eyes glowed amber in the dark. Its tusks gleamed. And when it opened its mouth, the sound that came out was like metal scraping bone. Frank pulled the chainsaw cord. The engine roared to life. "Come on!" The creature charged. Frank swung the saw up, blade screaming. It caught the hog thing's shoulder, tore through fur and flesh. Black blood sprayed across the walls. The creature shrieked high, metallic, wrong, and grabbed Frank by the ribs. It threw him into the feed bins. The sound of bones breaking echoed like firecrackers. Frank hit the ground, gasping, blood pouring from his mouth. The chainsaw clattered away, engine still running. Elizabeth screamed and swung the hatchet. The blade buried itself in the creature's back. It roared and spun, backhanded her across the barn. She hit the wall, vision going white. When it cleared, the hog thing was standing over Frank. It reached down, grabbed him by the chest. Frank looked at Elizabeth. His face was gray. Blood ran from his nose. "Light it," he said. "Frank, light it." The creature lifted him off the ground. Elizabeth scrambled for the matches, hand shaking. The hog thing opened its mouth wide, tusks spreading, ready to bite down on Frank's head. Elizabeth struck the match. The propane line ignited with a thunderclap. Fire raced across the floor, up the walls, across the ceiling. The barn became an oven. The hog thing shrieked and dropped. Frank staggered back. Its fur caught fire. The smell of burning hair filled the air, thick and choking. Elizabeth grabbed the chainsaw, pulled the throttle wide. The blade screamed. She charged. The saw bit into the creature's chest, grinding through bone. It grabbed her shoulders, claws sinking in deep. She felt them punch through muscle, scrape ribs. Pain exploded white hot. But she kept the throttle wide, shoving forward, pushing it back step by step. The hog thing's face was inches from hers. She could see into its mouth, rows of teeth, black tongue, throat that went down forever. It smelled like rot and copper and something older. The propane tanks exploded. The blast wave threw them both backward. Elizabeth hit the ground hard, ears ringing. The chainsaw was gone, melted to slag. Fire everywhere. The roof was collapsing, beams crashing down. She crawled toward the door, vision blurred. Behind her, the hog thing thrashed in the flames, still trying to reach her even as the fire consumed it. It didn't scream anymore, just made a sound like grinding metal. She made it outside, collapsed in the gravel. The barn was an inferno. She could feel the heat on her back, blistering. She rolled away, coughing, lungs full of smoke. "Frank." She tried to stand, fell, tried again, made it to her knees. The barn was gone, just flames and smoke and the skeleton of what used to be walls. No movement inside, no sound. She crawled back toward the barn, but the heat drove her back. She screamed his name. Nothing, just fire. Elizabeth collapsed in the gravel and didn't move. When she woke, it was dawn. The fire had burned itself out. The barn was gone, just ash and twisted metal and smoke that hung in the air like fog. She pushed herself up, wincing. Her shoulder was torn, shirt soaked with blood. Her hands were blistered. Every breath hurt. But she was alive. She stood slowly, looked at the ruins. No sign of the creature. No bones. No body. Just ash. Maybe it had burned completely. Maybe it was gone. She turned toward the cabin. Frank. She had to find Frank. He was on the porch. Not inside the cabin. On the porch. Lying on his back, arms at his sides. His chest was caved in, ribs visible through torn flesh. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. Elizabeth fell to her knees beside him, touched his face. Cold. He'd been dead for hours. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her voice cracked. She sat there for a long time, hand on his chest, watching the sun rise through the trees. The woods were quiet. No birds, no wind, just silence. Eventually, she stood. She couldn't stay here. Had to move. Had to get help. She found her boots, pulled them on, found a jacket. Her keys useless without a truck. She took them anyway. Outside, the clearing was still. The woods pressed in. She started walking. The trail followed the fence line, winding through the pines. Her legs shook. Her vision blurred, but she kept moving, one foot in front of the other. 1 mile, 2, the trail narrowed, trees leaned in. 3 miles, 4, her lungs burned. She stopped, leaned against a tree, tried to catch her breath. That's when she heard it. Footsteps behind her, heavy, slow. She turned. Nothing. She kept walking, faster now. The footsteps followed, always just out of sight, always close. 5 miles. The trees thinned. She could see light ahead. The main road. She stumbled out of the woods onto the shoulder and collapsed. Cars passed. She waved weakly. A truck slowed, stopped. An old man climbed out. "Jesus, you're hurt. Let me get you to town." He helped her into the truck. She couldn't speak, couldn't think, just sat there staring at nothing while he drove. The hospital, sheriff's department, paramedics asking questions she couldn't answer. They bandaged her shoulder, gave her fluids, kept her overnight for observation. The sheriff came the next morning. She told him everything. The Hog Thing, the siege, Frank, cowboy, the hunter. He wrote it all down, face neutral. Later, they found Frank's body. Cowboys too, the hunters, took photos, filed reports. The official story was a bear attack, wild animal, tragic. They were very sorry for her loss. Elizabeth didn't argue. Chapter 5. What Remains. 3 weeks later, Elizabeth went back. Just once, to collect what was left. The insurance check had come through, enough to cover the property damage, enough to sell the land and never think about it again. She'd already put it on the market. Some developer from Houston wanted to build a hunting lodge. Fine, let him find out. The cabin was a shell, windows broken, door gone. Inside, everything was destroyed. She didn't go in. Couldn't. The barn was a black smear on the ground. Nothing left but twisted metal and ash. She walked around it once, looking for something. Evidence, proof, bones. Nothing. She walked the property one last time, said goodbye to Frank in the place he'd loved most. The woods were quiet, no birds, no wind, just silence pressing in. On the porch, she found something that made her stop cold. A fresh hog carcass. Throat crushed, ribs spread open, eyes gone. Steam rose from the still warm flesh. Next to it, nailed to the porch beam with a railroad spike, was the SD card from the trail camera, the one the creature had moved. Her hand shook as she pried it loose. She should leave, should run, should burn this place to the ground and never look back. But she had to know. She drove to town, bought a card reader at the hardware store, checked into the motel on Highway 59, plugged the card into her laptop. The footage loaded. The clearing, the cabin, the porch where she was standing this morning. Then movement. The hog thing walked into frame, alive, whole, no burns, no wounds, like the fire had never happened. It stopped in front of the camera, tilted its head, then it knelt. Slow, deliberate, face filling the screen, and it smiled. The same smile, the same tusks, the same amber eyes burning in the darkness. It held the position, 10 seconds, 20, then it reached out, almost gently, and touched the camera lens. The footage cut to black. Elizabeth closed the laptop. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot. Nothing. Just cars and trucks and the highway stretching into the distance. But in the reflection of the glass, barely visible, she saw 2 amber glows hovering behind her. She spun around. The room was empty. She turned back to the window. The glows were still there in the reflection, closer now, right behind her. Elizabeth grabbed her keys, ran for the door, got in her car, started the engine, drove, didn't stop until she crossed the state line into Oklahoma. She never went back to Texas. But sometimes, late at night, she hears footsteps outside her apartment, heavy, slow, patient. And when she looks out the window, she sees hoofprints pressed into the snow that aren't there in the morning. The hog thing is patient, it's learned, and it remembers. Some hunts never end, they just wait. Folklore note: the legend of the hog thing, or variations of it, runs deep through East Texas, particularly in areas historically inhabited by the Choctaw and Caddo peoples. Red Hollow, as locals call it, refers not to a single geographic location but to a spiritual concept, cursed ground where hunger took root and never left. In Choctaw tradition, certain places are understood to be imbalanced sites where bloodshed, starvation, or desecration created a wound in the land that never healed. These places attract hunger spirits, entities that exist in a state between animal and something older. The Choctaw word nashoba refers to wolf, but there are older words for things that walk on 2 legs but are not men, words that are not spoken lightly. The hog thing, as described by those who claim to have seen it, shares characteristics with several indigenous legends: the ability to learn human behavior, the patience of a predator that understands time differently than we do, and the intelligence to manipulate its prey psychologically before the kill. The missing eyes in its victims may be ritualistic, a way of ensuring the dead cannot watch where they're going next. Elders in the region maintain that certain rules must be followed on old Choctaw land. Do not hunt after dark, do not camp near sinkholes or depressions, and most importantly, do not spill blood carelessly. Blood calls to blood, hunger calls to hunger, and some things that were starved long ago will never stop feeding. The pine forests outside Gilmer sit atop Red Hollow territory. The land has seen violence, frontier conflicts, failed settlements, disappearances that were never explained. Locals know better than to ask too many questions. They know what happens when the woods go silent. They know what it means when hogs turn up gutted on porches. And they know that some warnings aren't superstition, they're survival. The hog thing is still out there. It's been seen as recently as last year, tracks in the mud, carcasses left as messages, the sound of something heavy moving through the pines on moonless nights. Some say it's the same creature from 100 years ago. Some say it's worse, that it's learned from every kill, gotten smarter, more patient. If you ever find yourself in the piney woods of East Texas, and the forest goes quiet, and you smell something sweet and metallic on the wind, turn around, go back, don't hunt what's been killing the hogs. Because it's not hunting them. It's practicing. Well, boys and ghouls, that wraps up another terrorific tale from the vault. Frank thought he could protect his dream ranch with a .45 and a chainsaw. Thought fire would stop something that's been starving for 100 years, but some things don't burn, do they? Some things just learn. And the hog thing? It learned Frank's face, learned Elizabeth's scent, learned their routines, and now it's got all the time in the world to practice just how we love it. If this story crawled under your skin the right way, hit that subscribe button. New creature features drop every day at 8 p.m. Central, and trust me, tomorrow's even nastier. Leave a like if you'll never look at East Texas woods the same way again, and drop a comment where are you watching from? What cryptid haunts your neck of the woods? Ever been to Red Hollow territory? I'm always hunting for the next nightmare. Remember, if the forest goes quiet and you smell something sweet and metallic on the wind, it's not the hogs you need to worry about. It's what's been practicing on them. Until next time, kiddies, keep your fires burning and your eyes on the trees. This has been your late night creature feature. I'm Mr. Wendigo, and the hunger never stops.